So, what do Russians think about Russian official answers about things? Now, I've been doing these daily updates since day 85, and it's now day 260. And yesterday I went over this article as well as another one similar to it about how Russia was to pull out troops from frontline city of Kherson, according to the Ministry of Defense. They said Russia has decided to withdraw its troops from the right bank of the Dnieper River. They said if the Kyiv regime launches even more devastating attack on the dam, a flow of water could arise that would flood large areas, causing significant casualties. That's one of the excuses. So we got to get them out of there. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that to their own people. But there were other things in the other article, but then again, this one confirmed the same thing. They said, according to Servakin, Kyiv's troops suffered heavy losses amounting to over 12,000 soldiers in October, where Russian casualties were 7 to 8 times lower, he said. Now, I'm going to do a whole separate video about Russian math related to casualties, so look for that. But right now, as I look through this, so now I've been over a lot of articles. I am calculating, so it's 260 days times, and I usually do about 12 a day. So, and I read more than the 12, so we're being conservative. 260 times 12 is 3,120. So at this point, I've read more than 3,000 articles about Ukraine. So you start to see certain patterns, right? But then just being in the articles, sometimes there are things that are fortuitous. And this is one of those occasions. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually look at, because I happened to scroll down a little bit too far to the comments. I'm going to go over the comments with you. And when we go over the comments, you'll hear for yourself what the Russian people are actually saying. And this is despite what is actually being, like, you can't speak against the military or you can go to jail for up to 15 years. The special military operation. So, okay, let's just go through the comments and see what we see. Tomo says, ex-Putin advisor compares Kherson retreat in Ukraine to the collapse of the Soviet Union, warning of really big consequences. Putin, after disastrously trying to micromanage this war, has now shifted all the blame to the military. Sounds similar to what happened in Berlin a long time ago, and we all know how that ended up. Well, that doesn't sound complimentary, right? I mean, these people are supposed to, and now I did this about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, where I was looking at the comments, and the comments were largely pro-Russia, and there was a handful of detractors in there, but it's flipped. It's largely detractors now. Watch. Putin is a strategic genius. Annex Kherson says it's now part of Russia, only to abandon it. Russia's glorious retreat continues. Only 213 miles left for Sevastopol. Huh, how about that? Just a month ago, we were celebrating the referenda where the citizens of Kherson had voted 87.5% to be absorbed into the FSB. That's a shorthand for Russia. Now, the army is in full retreat. How does that work? Read the article. It's easy to fight a war behind a keyboard, but when in charge of real men's actual life, you think differently. An understandable retreat for the time being. Now, he might be right, but what's more important is that is the first defense of Putin or the military that I've seen in all the questions so far. Wow. Dam just an excuse, the dam that they're saying that they're going to potentially blow. On the contrary, Ukraine once accused Russia of damaging a dam and using water as a weapon. Could someone explain to me why Ukrainian civilians are being removed from Kherson? If Russian soldiers are pulling out and therefore surrendering the city without fighting, what danger would the Ukrainians be in? Every war won by Russia begin with an attack and then hold defense for testing 100% opponent, then a regroup in winning border, and then begin the assault without any break until total victory is story. So this is another defense of how the Russians are handling it. This one says, I believe that Russia did not expect that Ukraine would accept the U.S. plan to destroy the dam. Now they are, the U.S. plan to destroy the dam. Now they are in a situation where they have to withdraw from Kherson due to logistical problems. I also believe that they will soon adapt to the new situation and regain the newly appropriated territory of the Russian Federation. Okay? Not without thousands and thousands of Russian lives lost. Can someone tell me what is the right bank and the left bank of the river? Are you people retarded? That's actually a good question. The right bank of the river is the bank, the sand that goes up to the water, and the left bank of the river is the lower side, which banks up against the, yeah. So you just have to you just kind of switch them mentally. Uh, it is as the river flows, since it flows due south, the western bank is the right, the eastern bank is the left. It seems backwards, but it's cardinal direction that dictates it. All Western media celebrating total defeat of Russian army. Shame, shame. Okay, so there's another person in the corner of, saying, go Russia. And yes, they are celebrating the defeat of the Russian army or the forthcoming defeat of the Russian army. For want of spy satellites, the HIMARS weren't located. For want of HIMARS destruction, the bridge collapsed. For want of the bridge, reinforcements didn't arrive. For want of reinforcements, the city was lost. Excellent analysis, Tanarov. The Dnieper River water source are just within Moscow. If Moscow decides to divert the flow of water from the Dnieper to somewhere else, then every hopes of Ukraine will be shattered. Even the Dnieper Dam would be dried up. It's just that it's too much to vulgar display of authority here. Russians are humble people like most of Asians, unlike Westerners. Okay, another pro-Putin kind of something, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to dam the Dnieper River at Moscow so that the Ukrainians can't have anything to drink. And I don't think that's going to work. It looks like Russia sold out. This talk of big plan is becoming pathetic. Kherson is not just some city, it's strategically important. Okay, so it's quotes like this that really took my breath away in understanding, like, wow, they are really talking smack about the war, and they can't even call it a war without having potential fines or jail. I mean, this is really something. Okay, just a few more. Does Russia want to win its war, or is the objective to prolong suffering? What is the end game here, and why the stalling? Again, this is probably somebody who's pro-Russia who can't understand, who can't wrap their mind around why it's not working out. Would somebody please tell me what is Russia thinking of? Admittedly, I'm sitting in my comfortable chair and I know nothing of war, but this is the second time Russia has pulled back. To tell civilians you are now Russians and then pull back must have a reason and we're not told about or don't see. Remember, so there's people that are pro-Russia, and that used to be the majority. Now people that are questioning and going, yeah, this really isn't working, seems to be the majority, with a few people in the middle going, I don't get it. Why are they doing this? The pullout is not for the military alone, but for the newly Russian citizen as well. Avoiding civilian casualty within the battlefield is one of primary concern and policy of this special military operation. Okay, at least somebody's calling it a special military operation. The rest have just given up. This autumn, Russia may wish to show the whole world that it wasn't born yesterday, but without causing high civilian and troop casualties where possible, because they are writing contemporary world history and they know it. Another, smoke in a crack pipe. Slaughter every one of those Ukrainian fascist animal, please, Russia. Russian supporter. Stretching the troops all over the northeast and south is a huge mistake. Will be. RF, Russian Federation, will have the ability right now cutting the supply lines from west to the other fronts through the river and focus on the main gem, which is Donbass front. Another supporter. It is becoming increasingly clear that what happened yesterday was another great victory for Russia and a huge defeat for the Ukraine Nazis. Furthermore, it is certain that this feint was in the plans for the SMO from the very start. It was always intended that we should move out out of the city before winter and then return again when the snows thaw. So far, every single thing that has happened was predicted and was in the plan. Russia is very clearly winning. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that I used to hear all of, with a couple of speckles in, but I'm not hearing that all of anymore. Okay? This guy, Russia will win, is somebody I actually quoted before, the same guy that was saying this, and I think you're having a nervous breakdown. Red is not blue, up is not down, and retreating out of the most important city Russia annexed is not a win. Okay, rivers tend to be good for defensive position for soldiers to dig in. Another one, a very sensible thing to do with the vindictive mindset of the NATO Nazis, thugs running Ukraine forces. A reply to that, massive denial. Who began this military operation? Not the US, not NATO, nor Ukraine. Putin and his generals are the Nazi thugs. And I think that's pretty fair. So Rus military failed in holding Kherson? Asks one question. Russian generals are totally brilliant to move Russian troops to a better defensive ground. This is not a war trying to gain more ground. Well, at least not yet. So they are kind of right in that because their supply lines have been cut and they don't really have a good way in or out, they are smart to move it back, but this wasn't exactly a brilliant move. Not having your supply lines cut would have been a more brilliant move. Looks like the river is the borderline of each country. Well, and that may very well be for a little while, but it's not going to be. And remember, they said that they were going to fight for every square inch of their newly annexed lands. Okay, just a couple more. Russia took citizens and abandoned the land. Shows the war is about welfare of citizens and not invasion of land. Well, they kind of kidnapped the citizens, so it's not exactly that. What experts? How is Ukraine going to invade Crimea when they cannot access it? Both armies are facing the same geographic and terrain limits. Kherson is where the conflict logically ends. Both sides will be pushed to negotiate. The end outcome will be Crimea and Donbas regions held by Russia prior to the conflict will be ceded permanently by Kyiv, while Russia concedes that it has no further claims. Oh, that sounds terribly balanced, doesn't it? Then there will be some haggling over reparations, NATO and EU membership, as well as security guarantees to both parties from each other and the West. Those guarantees worked like a charm the last time, didn't they? So in a sense, Putin wins. He's not going to win. That won't happen. Kyiv avoided a worse outcome. The EU can stop the bleeding, and the US and UK can go foment conflict in other places like Taiwan. Zelensky will be a footnote in history. This guy is smoking the crack pipe. This is the kind of thing that I used to see all the time, but it's fewer and further in between. I thought Putin was bound by your constitution to protect Russian territory. No one in Donbas is going to feel secure if the Russians pull out any more territory. They might be grinding down the Ukrainian army, but this just gives the West confidence to keep funding and supplying the war. Again, this is the kind of person that's in the middle who is seeing this and going, wait a minute, this isn't good. This couldn't be happening. This can't be, right? So it has changed significantly. One more, while RT report says this is because of a dam, the Western report says it's the result of a worsening logistic issue since Ukraine's counteroffensive at beginning damaged a few bridges and cut off supply lines to Russian troops on the western side of the river. Yeah, you see a very different perspective in the way that this is done. And the dam, that doesn't even make sense. Like, if you're Ukraine, are you going to blow up your own dams and flood out your own civilians? Remember, Ukraine has never conceded that these people are actually Russian. These people are still Ukrainians as far as Ukraine is concerned. Okay, so that's what I wanted to present to you right now. I wanted you to get a sense of how different sides are actually thinking about this and the percent of people that are actually talking about, bad-mouthing Russia. And they're openly bad-mouthing Russia since mobilization. And I think that mobilization has had a deleterious effect in keeping lips quiet like the Russians wanted. Okay, thank you for your time. Talk to you later.